Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres. Today I'm going to talk about the bane of every crafter's existence, storage. This, for instance, okay, this is a little cheapy X-Acto brand, probably, saw. I couldn't even guess how long I've had it. It probably came originally as part of an X-Acto knife set. Yes, it did. It says X-Acto on the butt of the handle. It's nice if you can keep that whole set together, because this can be used for other kinds of blades besides a saw blade. This saw blade, by the way, is a great way for someone who doesn't have a huge collection of tools. You get an X-Acto set that contains a saw blade and usually about a dozen blades, half of which you never figure out what you could use them for. And that will allow you to do all the cardboard work and all the lightweight woodwork that you need to do for something like this. I have made many a storage container using paint sticks. If you don't care that so this one happens to have advertisements on it. Don't forget to pick up your painting supplies, blah, 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 blah. It might even, this one doesn't have a telephone number on it. I have some things, like some of my old yardsticks that came from specific hardware stores. I wouldn't cut any of those up unless they had been broken accidentally. But some of the paint sticks have no words on them. And they actually make really good dividers because they're sturdy enough. They're about 1/8 of an inch wide, smidge more, so it's more like, 3 or 4. I guess it's about 4 millimeters wide. So there's plenty sturdy. I mean, you could break them, but the point is not to break things. The point is to use things. But that allows you to make the cut halfway through, just as wide as this is, and slide things together and have your dividers. As I was saying, Adam Savage will sit there and lay out everything and do it by frequency of use, difficulty of, something weird like this shape. Okay. I don't really want it banging around in a drawer open like that. I could possibly damage it. So perhaps I want to provide something that gives me a T shape so that I could keep it in one spot. Things to think about. For sewing supplies and stuff like that, most of my stuff goes into big lumpy containers, to be honest. I do have some portable, smaller kits that I take with me to events. Things that would have needles, threads in several colors, safety pins, some pins, small scissors, things like that, just in case a seam goes on something, somebody comes in and says, my button fell off, do you know anybody who has on here? Fix this, that sort of thing. That's just a travel thing for me. So I don't worry about that being like totally neat. The only thing I worry about it is when I reach in, am I going to stick myself with anything? So my needles are all in a needle case, things like that. But when you're building something and you're not sure, sometimes working it out in cardboard ahead of time is a great way to figure out what you want to buy once you want to buy something. I have once or twice, and I don't actually have any examples right now because I've rearranged some of my storage, actually wound up with a large plastic storage box at the bottom that had large flat things in it. And then I wound up plopping something like this, which probably actually wasn't a tray like this. It was probably, and lots of things come in trays like this at the grocery store, so sometimes you can score cardboard trays that aren't necessarily from your ball jars. But cans of tomato sauce, I've seen all kinds of stuff that will come in this, depending on the brand. And they're usually very sturdy cardboard because, well, cans are heavy. I have taken a plastic box that had flat things in it, taken a cardboard box, made a couple of dividers in it, put my things in, and plopped it in the top of the cardboard box. I somewhere in storage right now, and I know where it is. We've been moving furniture, and there's a couple of places I can't get to in here right now. A couple of my portable kits that I take sometimes if I'm teaching will have a bottom area and then a tray in the top, kind of like toolboxes do a lot of times, and then a cover that locks on. You can create that same effect by using a box in the top with or without dividers. Sometimes it's a temporary arrangement. You've got a project, and for whatever reason you need to clear that project, but keep it all in one location. Some people are not fortunate enough to be able to leave stuff on a table all the time. My cat has been trained not to go onto the table. She rarely does. That's the attitude we've generally taken for cats. No cats on the tables, no cats on the counters, no cats on the sideboards. Every once in a while they need to be reminded, but if you bring them up that way since they're teeny, most cats can learn. They're not stupid. Sometimes they do things out of defiance. But there are places where Isa is allowed to go, for instance, that's our cat, that are up. So she's right now, she's sitting on top of a box over there on it's actually a blank that you buy for making pillows. And I decided I didn't like the quality of it, but she does. So she's using it as a little bed up there, and she's allowed to be up there. So she doesn't, because she has places that she is allowed to be, she doesn't feel as much of a need to be on these other places that I would prefer she not be on. But back to storage. Not a difficult project, but something that's a handy skill to have. Let me see if I can pick up a couple of pieces of cardboard, and I'll be right back to give you a demo. Ta-da! Cardboard. Yes, this is a standard cutting board from my kitchen. I do have the large fabric cutting boards. I don't currently have any on the table right now because the project I am cutting out, I am not using a rotary cutter on. I am simply using an old-fashioned pair of fabric shears. Cardboard. One of the companies that I buy stuff from every month gives me this piece of cardboard in the top every month of my box. So it fits perfectly in. It keeps the items in more stable. And I keep them because when I am packing needles and a few other things that are long and skinny and thin, I will make little fold-over cardboard inserts that go into my packing to try to keep the U.S. Post Office from bending things. And most of the time it works really well. I also use it when I'm packing something sharp, so that if the post office manages to, I use bubble packaging, so it's that manila envelope with bubbles inside. If I'm packaging something like that, I know from experience that they will somehow manage to flex that thing enough to poke anything that's sharp through the package, and they have totally destroyed a couple of my packages before. So in cases like that, I will cover the end that is sharp with a piece of cardboard, tape it in place, and that avoids the drama of the whole thing. But this is an excellent example of the kind of quality cardboard that I would play with. So in this case, all I'm going to do is I'm going to, see, that's the one I've already used, so I will choose one that I have not used. I will measure the inside of it. And that's too short a ruler. Excellent. I do not like using flexible rulers for this kind of work, but I don't know where my good one is. So I'm going to not use the previous number there. This is 7 1/4 plus a millimeter. Okay. So that's actually 6 1/4 plus a millimeter. Or I can just use the tape measure down like it is, and that makes it work fine. 7 1/4 plus a millimeter. So that means I'm just cutting it a little smidge past, or marking it. I'm just marking it. I'm not actually cutting the cardboard at this point. And I know I want it to come up less than the height of this thing. Ah, and conveniently, it is 1 inch tall. So, one inch it is. And the ideal situation, I think I had some help earlier with someone who may have snuck through the dining room. Isa knows she's not supposed to be on the table, but she sometimes sneaks through with some slightly defiant expression on her face. Either that or Henry borrowed my pen. Let me get a pen. There are times when you're just less coordinated than you'd like to be. There we go. My eternal collection of pens. I could just mark it with the knife. I prefer not to do that because it is a permanent mark where you can ignore an ink mark. And I'm going to mark both ends of this cardboard. This is not going to be precision because this cardboard is not 100% precision, but it's a good mock-up. And that's all we're going for here is a mock-up. So if I were trying to actually create an experimental insert, I would now use a knife. It can be an X-Acto knife. Some people are really fond of rotaries. I use rotaries sometimes. I am not as in love with them as some folks are because I like those crisp corners, and that's a tough thing to develop, I guess you'd say, with a rounded blade that's got limitations. That's all I just did, was make a little piece of cardboard. Now, I now have a piece of cardboard that I could slide right in here. I can decide if it's a little too tight. I could shave off an edge. And you can see it's bending, so that means it is a little too tight. And I should shave off probably 1 millimeter, maybe 2. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to work out the distance for this side and do something a little different, because the process of removing cardboard from the middle of this is actually going to give me some spring. So, looking for the end, there it is. I'm going to measure this again. Remember, I'm not using the end on my tape measure because I know it's inaccurate. Ooh, and now I'm hitting one of those things that's always an interesting decision for me. I actually prefer metric when I am doing precision work because I've got all those cute little millimeters to work with. And if I am using a ruler, which in this case has 1/8 inch marks on it, I can't be as precise easily as if I am using metric. So we're going to make believe it's that long, which it is. And I'm going to simply transfer that information to my cardboard. And I'm going to cut another piece. I am going to measure the 1 inch part because I want that to be consistent. And consistency is the big deal. If you're going to use the yellow side, use the yellow side. If you're going to use the white side, use the white side. If you're going to use another ruler entirely, use that other ruler entirely. Figure out a way for you to mark so that you know exactly where that line is. Because it's not going to be tidy unless you bother to take the time. End of conversation. People who fuss about, oh, I don't want to have to bother, well, I can't fix that. You know, I can't. And maybe it doesn't bother you that your work is a little messy. This is just a mock-up. If I am off by a little bit, I am really not going to have a cow. just really not going to. It's just not worth it because this is a mock-up. All I'm doing is I'm seeing if I like the way it looks. I'm seeing if it's going to work for me. So there's a limit to how much effort I'm going to put in. I'm not cutting something expensive. This is not silver or gold plate or anything else. This is a hunk of cardboard that I saved from a shipment of stuff that I get every month that includes dish detergent and other stuff. But I get one of these sheets every month and I stack them up until I have at least usually 4 or 5 of them on the back of my shipping station, because I never know how much of this sort of stuff I'll need. And gosh, it's handy to have good, clean cardboard. Yes, it's got words and stuff on one side of it. I always do look to see what the words say, just on the odd chance that cutting apart the words makes it spell something weird. You know, we've seen some hysterical signs over the years that fell apart partially and then said something they didn't mean to say. This X-Acto knife is not the sharpest piece. I need to change the blade. I have very sharp blades down in the studio because I have scalpel blades down there. But scalpel blades are more brittle than regular X-Acto blades, so I don't like to use them for regular crafty things. Okay, so I now have an approximation on this. Now I'm going to say that this really is a smidge too long. So I'm going to decide to take off a teeny bit here just to make this fit better. And that's the lovely thing about this kind of thing, is you get to play with it and you get to say, ooh, that really is too long. I'm going to shave that off. Okay, now that fits. Perfect. It's not a perfectly straight piece of cardboard because it's a cheesy little piece of cardboard. If that was a piece of wood, it would be infinitely sturdier. It's not. It doesn't matter. It's a mock-up. I'm experimenting with this to see if it's going to make me happy. And if the answer is it doesn't make me happy, then we'll work out something else. Now, what I would normally do at this point is figure out what the center points are. So, this is a specific length. And I can divide that, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's see. I wish I had my good tape measure, my good ruler. Let's see, 17.5. So 8.25. Where is it? And I am going to mark the center approximately of that. And then I'm going to mark the center approximately of this. Okay. Okay. Now, like I say, this is not engineering, so it will not be perfect. But it should be good enough, especially for a mock-up. Getting the impression that this is off, which means I probably had my tape cockeyed slightly. Not that I've ever done that. Okay, yeah, it's off a little teeny bit. Okay. Ooh, and that's why you cut twice. You cut twice. No, you don't cut twice. You measure twice and cut once. Now, at this point, because I'm working with lightweight cardboard, I have the option to use a pair of scissors or kitchen shears, or to use my X-Acto blade. I'll be using the X-Acto blade to show how I would do this if I were using something nicer than cheesy cardboard. And I'm simply going to cut out a thin slice that's about 1/8 of an inch wide or less, right in the middle where I marked that. Try to be moderately tidy, but I'm not worrying about it obsessively. And I'm trying to go about halfway across the cardboard. And I'll do the same thing on this one. I'm eyeballing it. I'm not trying to be crazy about it. But I am making sure I don't cut my fingers. I am making sure I'm not messing up the dining room table, because I have on a decent dining room table, and this is a cutting board. You can use regular cutting boards like you'd have in the kitchen. You can use any kind of self-healing cutting board, cutting mats that you might use for other craft work, as long as you make sure you are not cutting through it if you have a good table. You can throw a piece of cardboard on here that's super thick. You can throw a piece of plywood on here that's super thick. Do what you got. Now, see, I've got half of each thing cut out approximately. This one I can see is not all the way through to half. And when I stick it together, I magically have dividers, which I can then stick in here. And that's the one I decided was a little long, but it may still work, because sometimes pressure fit is my preference. I don't like to glue stuff in. Okay? That wasn't hard. I could have decided that I wanted something different. I could have decided that I needed more dividers than this. The actual one that I'm going to make is going to have more dividers than this. This is my standard, where I just have 4. But I will actually be working with one of these. I'm not sure which. Probably this one to start with. And I will put a sign on the inside of this to cover up this, because while it looks really nice, it says PRD 1878. These are Cuban cigars. And there's 20 of them. And this was probably worth a lot of money at some point. Yeah. But I don't need to advertise Cuban cigars, because I don't sell Cuban cigars. But I will put a sign on here that says something like, let's see, this will be for thimble rings. So these will be, it'll say thimble rings and how much it is per thimble ring. These will probably be pewter. So I'll put that on there so people are not asking me, gee, what's this metal? Okay. And I might even say how many sizes there are, because sometimes people look at something and they don't realize that there are different sizes, and that's why there are different compartments. I currently have, let's see, extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large. So I currently have 5 sizes, but eventually I will probably have 6. So I would probably actually make 6 compartments. So that's 1 long compartment here, 1 long divider that goes from end to end, and then 2 short pieces here, so that I get 6 compartments. I will be using wood when I do this, and I will probably not use this. I'm going to see if I have, this is thicker than what I prefer to use. This is trim. Forget what this was used. I think this is some of the window trim. I will be trying to see if I have some trim that's thinner, like this. See the difference? This is like 3/8 of an inch thick. I prefer 1/8 to 1/4, and closer to 1/8 is better than 1/4. And that will be sturdy enough. I'm not going to line it. In the case of this one, it's just a nice wooden interior. In the case of this one, it's fancy, and it has a velvet interior. I may save this one for the sterling silver ones, because that would look really nice, and it would also sort of make a point, I guess you could say. What I have to decide to do or not with the sterling silver is I can't leave them open. I have to have them closed, because somebody will steal them, because you can honk it. you can hawk silver. You can't hawk the other stuff that I sell. So, yeah, it's one of the joys of running a shop. But I will be working out something like this. You can make these as fancy or as unfancy as you want. I actually ran across a cigar box that my dad made into a jewelry box for me. God, I must have been 4 or 5. And I probably wanted a jewelry box. And he made one. And he did it just by taking something that was deeper than this and lining it with velvet and then putting dividers in it. And it was perfectly fine, especially for a kid. I still have it. So obviously it worked. So I hope this inspires you to experiment a little bit and see what you might be able to come up with. If you're interested in more detailed instructions or anything, let me know and I can always do another video. Until then, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell because obviously I have lots going on. I have to do 2 of these. And then I've got lots of other things to do. I'll be doing some new flags for our shop soon. I'm waiting for the fabric to come in. I decided to chicken out and not drive all over the state to try and find the colors I wanted. So I ordered them in online from the same company I would have ordered them from in person if I had driven the 100 miles one way and 100 miles the other way sort of thing. But until next time, bye. Oh, and keep brainstorming because obviously I am.